Hello, hello, you beautiful beings. Welcome back to Muse, where we are talking about all things personal growth, self expression, creativity, and everything in between. I'm Damaris, artist and creator, sharing my experiences, my journey, being able to express myself and use this podcast as a way to grow and to learn more about myself, what I think about being an artist and creator, hoping that you gain some value, gain some knowledge through sharing these episodes. So thank you for being here. I hope that you've had an amazing week. Today in the Northern Hemisphere, the first day of autumn. It was a beautiful day today. I can tell that the seasons are changing, but it's still warm. You can feel it in the air, that the change in weather, the change in just the energy is shifting. But I have been ruminating about this topic that I want to talk about today because I've been reading these two books that have really impacted me this week. I've been enjoying them so much that I wanted to share it on the podcast, and I haven't done this before. I haven't really discussed books that I've been reading, but I felt that although this doesn't tie into creativity 100%, it ties into the other component that I like to talk about and that is very important to me, which is personal growth and like self-knowledge and learning. We're talking about identity and storytelling and how they give us belonging, which is such a big topic, and we can definitely, if I wanted to, go so deep into this, and I would love to do that someday in a different capacity, but I think as a podcast, it would just be me talking for like 25 hours, and that isn't conducive to great listening. So I'm going to keep this brief, but I just wanted to share my thoughts and feelings about the things that I've been reading and why I think it's important. The way we think about ourselves and the way we present ourselves to the world comes from stories we believe about ourselves or stories that have been told to us. What if the stories we tell are the key to belonging? So the first book that I've been reading is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, which is an exploration of identity, belonging, immigration, sexuality, language, and this book is so beautiful, so beautifully written, so moving in what the author is talking about, and has impacted me profoundly. The first quote from this book that I loved says, "I was seen, I who had seldom been seen by anyone, I who was taught by you to be invisible, to be safe." The second quote, "Because the thing about beauty is that it's only beautiful outside of itself. Seen through a mirror, I viewed my body as another. As a boy a few feet away, his expression unmoved, daring the skin to remain as it was." These two passages, I actually listened to them multiple times because they were so deeply felt. In reflecting on this story, what Vuong was talking about here, about being seen and the identity of that, I have shared in my own life this component of visibility and difference. Now, my second book that I was reading is Do Story by Bobette Buster, which is more practical. It's a nonfiction book about how to tell your story better. There were a few parts that really impacted me about this book. There are 10 principles that the author goes through that they have learned and put together about telling stories, and how a lot of stories either have one or more of these principles in them, which make them impactful and meaningful to other people when they're listening. There were two principles that has impacted me the most. One was about vulnerability, daring to be vulnerable. So this quote: "If we are to become fully conscious, mature adults, our job is to break through those layers. Telling our story can help us achieve this, but we must be willing to be vulnerable, to show some skin." The second principle that impacted me a lot was called "Hand over the spark." Stories are always about transformation. Whether we know it or not, whatever the story we are telling, we are always sharing a threshold moment. This means that we are at a crossroads in our life, a turning point, a fork in the road. This threshold is a call for us to wake up or to rise to a challenge before us. Fundamentally, we are being called to change, to discover the courage to become our best selves. This moment is always elemental, a kind of fire, a spark carrying us towards transformation. And these two principles connect so fully to the other book that I was reading about vulnerability and about this transformation within our story, within our lives. And it's something that I personally use in the way that I share my stories and the way that I express myself in general when it comes to my experiences. Together, these books reveal storytelling isn't just a craft, it's identity work. Belonging emerges when stories are told honestly and heard fully. And this was something that is a through line of both books and of my life that I am reflecting on from reading this, which I find so fascinating because these two books are completely different, yet have come to a similar place, at least in my perspective. As a child, I have always felt different. As much as I have wanted to fit in and worked hard to fit in, I was self-conscious that I was and felt different. I could see that other children, in their behavior and their thought process, that they didn't think like me. But even so, I still wanted to be different. I resisted being the same as everyone else. The narrative about myself of being unseen, misunderstood, shaped how I connected with people, and it still impacts me today. That line that Vuong said in the book about being seen, that is something that I have desired and have felt that it has been difficult to feel seen or understood. Yet I have always wanted to be different and not fit in necessarily. It's a very confusing place to be. And everyone carries a version of this inner narrative, whether it's about beauty, belonging, invisibility, worth. All these things make up the way that we see ourselves and how we portray ourselves in the world so that others perceive us in a certain way. But why does this matter? Why does belonging, why does storytelling and identity even matter? Stories in general, since the beginning of time, is how humans pass on information, language, culture. It's a component of survival and identity that without storytelling, there would be no shared knowledge, no lineage, no progress. Identity and storytelling are inseparable. They define how we see ourselves and how we're seen. And I believe that belonging is the bridge. We belong when our story is honored, and we help others belong when we honor their story. In the book Do Story, vulnerability is the stories that cost you something are the ones that give others belonging. All of this, and reflecting on my childhood and even the things that I feel now, how this really comes to have impacted me even in the way I live my life through my pillars. More specifically, my one pillar about self-knowledge and inner clarity. It's something that drives my curiosity and identity, and it helps me to continually want to learn everything about myself, even the uncomfortable parts, even the areas that feel really vulnerable to talk about, like this whole concept of being seen and understood, is a very, very vulnerable and deep reflection aspect of myself that I don't talk about very often. And it is uncomfortable, for sure. Being this honest and this vulnerable is very much uncomfortable, but it is something that I need to expose and to understand about myself. And why is it uncomfortable? Clarity fuels the reasons why I want to share my work with others, so that through my experience, through me being vulnerable and sharing these aspects of myself, you might also see yourself more clearly. I feel like there is a lot of talk about how we are in a place where we are becoming more self-obsessed and self-absorbed. I think that as much as those things are true and are happening, the more that we have clarity and truth and understanding and knowledge about ourselves, as much as that sometimes can be or appear self-absorbed or self-obsessed, the truth is that honoring that identity and those truths about yourself helps you reflect that in a more clear and honest and authentic way, so that you can help others see those things about themselves too, and then they become more clear and authentic, and so on and so forth. It shifts the culture toward a collective flourishing, which is so beautiful if we could get to that point. So there actually needs to be, in my opinion, more of this reflection and self-knowledge, curiosity, to have more clarity and reflection about ourselves. Which makes me ask the question, what's a story that you've been telling yourself for years? And how might that story change if you approached it from a place of self-knowledge and clarity and belonging? So that was my quick, not so quick reflection on the books that I've been reading and how they've impacted me. And just wanting to share these books that I highly recommend that you read, but also just to sit and think about this topic I find interesting, and it was a new connection that I've made that I never thought about before. So maybe that's something that's interesting to you as well. Again, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing week. We'll see you next week with a really special episode. So stay tuned for that. Have an amazing day, morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Wherever you are, take care. Keep creating. Bye.